The meeting was already starting when I walked in. 12 people around the conference table. Laptops open, coffee's half finished. That specific kind of corporate silence where everyone is pretending to review notes but actually just waiting for it to be over. I had been at Meridian Solutions for 3 years. Long enough to know the unwritten rules. Long enough to know that when Richard Calloway walked into a room, you made yourself smaller. Richard was our VP of operations. 53 years old, never wrong, never questioned. The kind of man who interrupted women mid-sentence and called it building on your idea. He had this way of leaning back in his chair during presentations, arms crossed, slight smile, that made you feel like you were auditioning for a job you already had. I had learned his patterns the hard way. My first month, I pitched a client retention strategy in a team meeting. Spent 2 weeks building it. Richard listened, nodded slowly, then said great direction and moved on. The next week, he presented the same strategy to the executive team. Word for word, his name on the deck. I told my manager. She gave me a look I'll never forget, not angry, not surprised, just tired. That's just how Richard operates, she said quietly. Pick your battles. So I did what every woman in that office learned to do. I kept my head down. I documented everything. I sent recap emails after every meeting. I built a paper trail so thorough it could survive a federal investigation. And I waited. The Hargrove pitch was the biggest account Meridian had chased in 7 years. A $4.2 million contract. The kind of win that gets your name remembered at this company or erased from it. I had been assigned to the research team. 3 months of analysis, competitor breakdowns, client psychology mapping. I wrote the core narrative. I built the pricing model. I designed the risk mitigation framework that our director called the strongest strategic document this team has produced in years. The presentation was scheduled for a Thursday. Richard would be delivering it to Hargrove's executive board. Wednesday night, he sent me a Slack message at 10:47 p.m. Good work on the background material. I've incorporated it into the deck. Background material. 3 months of work. Background material. I stared at my phone for a long time. Then I opened my laptop, pulled up every email, every draft, every timestamped document. I made a folder. I labeled it clearly. Then I did something I had never done before. I requested 5 minutes at the start of the Thursday presentation. Richard approved it without asking why. He probably assumed I wanted to introduce the agenda, set the table for him. Thursday morning, the Hargrove executives filed in, 6 of them, serious, unhurried, the kind of people who had sat through 1,000 pitches and remembered maybe 3. Richard stood at the head of the table, already smiling, already comfortable. I walked to the front of the room. Before we begin, I said, I want to give you some context about how this proposal was built. Richard's smile didn't move. Not yet. I pulled up the first slide. My name, my team, a timeline of the research process, every phase, every milestone, every contributor, dated and sourced. Over the past 3 months, our team developed the core strategy you're about to see. I led the research, built the pricing model, and wrote the risk framework. I want you to know who created what you're evaluating today, because when you have questions about the data, you'll want to talk to the people who actually built it. The room was completely still. I looked directly at the Hargrove executives when I said it. Not at Richard, not at my colleagues, at the clients. Because here's the thing about powerful people in rooms. They care about competence. They care about who actually knows the material. And I had just made it very clear, in front of witnesses who had no loyalty to Richard Calloway, exactly who that was. Richard's smile had gone somewhere else entirely. I handed the presentation back to him without another word, walked to my seat, and opened my notebook. He delivered the pitch. Professionally. Correctly. But twice, the Hargrove executives stopped him mid-slide. Can we ask the researcher on this section a question? Both times, they looked at me. Both times, Richard said, of course. We won the Hargrove account. 3 weeks later, I was called into a meeting with Richard's director. I walked in expecting a conversation about team dynamics and communication protocols. Corporate language for sit down and be quiet. Instead, she slid a folder across the table. We're creating a new senior strategist role, she said. Richard will be transitioning to a different division. I looked at the folder. My name was already on it. I found out later that 2 other women on the team had submitted formal documentation the same week I gave that presentation. Turns out I wasn't the only one who had been building a paper trail. We had just been waiting for someone to go first. I think about that Thursday a lot. Not because I outsmarted anyone. Not because I won some dramatic showdown. But because I walked into that room having decided something simple. That my name was going on my work. And I was done waiting for permission.